This week, we sit down with former Sister of St. Joseph's, Sister Suzanne Carroll.
My name is Suzanne Carroll, and I am a cannabis user. I am also a former Sister of St. Joseph.
After being misdiagnosed for MS, Sister Suzanne has been suffering from complex regional pain syndrome and being fed a diet of opioids for 20 years, including 400 micrograms of fentanyl every 36 hours.
I was at the point where I was actually losing hope, but my pain had gotten to the point where I did not feel that I could participate fully in life at that point.
Sister Suzanne was losing faith in the medical field that told her they were doing everything they could to save her.
I was beginning to lose hope. I didn't feel like I could make any forward progress despite the fact that I was involved with the medical community and they were doing everything that they could to relieve my pain and suffering. But finally, through my interaction with the cannabis nurses and my use of cannabis, I actually felt like I had gotten to the point where I could participate fully in the life of Christ.
She left the congregation in search of reinventing herself, and being inspired by cannabis, religion, and spirituality, she found help and savior for her constant pain.
Cannabis, religion, and spirituality actually, for me, all form a cohesive whole.
Now clean for over a year, Sister Suzanne is sharing her story to the world to help break the cannabis stigma.
Cannabis has brought healing to me by relieving the intense physical pain that I felt constantly. It has allowed me to grow emotionally to the point where I start to give back some of the things that I had that I felt Christ had prepared me to give to people around me. I truly believe that I was then encouraged to reinvest myself in my sharing of my love of Christ with others around me.
What would Jesus say?
I know exactly what he would say. He would say that marijuana is a plant that he gave us for a reason. And unfortunately, it has a stigma associated with it because some people have abused that plant. But we do have to remember that he gave it to us for a reason, and therefore he would expect us to use it appropriately.
Zoom live on February 3rd at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as the In the Weeds team sits down and spends some time listening to Sister Suzanne's powerful story of recovery through the use of cannabis. Find us at www.facebook.com/Prohibition Talk Radio.
All right, guys, welcome back to another In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. We are really excited today to share a really deep story with everybody this week. We have Sister Suzanne, a former member of St. Joseph's, with a truly remarkable story, one that I think is truly should impact a lot of people. I think we've had a great response to it on social media. We've seen a lot of people really kind of, like we said earlier, that we haven't seen before, really reached out, shared it, and had a lot of people reach out to us, talked about almost crying, right? It's remarkable because there's a couple things that stick out, right? It's opioids, it's fentanyl, and that you have a religion and you're very strict religion, right? So and that you're a sister, a former sister, you left the clergy. So there's a long story to talk about, but 20 years of opioids prescriptions, right? Trying to find a way to kill the pain, and then you're introduced to cannabis. So we have a lot to talk about today, right? But first and foremost, let me say hi to Sherry, the Green Nurse Group, right? So Sherry is connected to Suzanne here. We saw her on the show. Well, we have a dog every time, right?
Let me get rid of my dog here.
Oh, is that your dog?
Yes, it is.
Right, we thought it was mine, right? So with Suzanne's story here, right? Here we are, have a sister of religion, right? Who practice it, and the big thing everybody always asks is, what would Jesus say? And it's a great question and a great quote for what this episode we're going to talk about, right? Because you're really going to take a different approach to it. We're talking about how you represent a different community for us, right? A lot of people we talk to are the younger generation. They're the people that are in the business. They are people that have a different approach to their outlook on cannabis, right? And here's somebody who you've lived through the stigmas, really, like legitimately. So that's what I want to talk about today. So first and foremost, we'll talk to you, figure out give us a little bit of your story, the background. Like obviously you grew up in a culture that wasn't a cannabis-based culture, correct?
That's correct.
So where did it all start for you with religion? Let's talk about that real quick. I mean, you went to school, correct?
Yes, I did.
And why did you leave?
Probably a better question is, why did I go into the convent?
Yes.
I probably should never have gone in, although I did feel a calling, and my parish priest kind of misunderstood. I went to talk to him just in general, and he misunderstood me. And he decided that I was going to be a nun, which I didn't realize until he called my mother to explain to her what I needed to get ready to go into the convent. My mother said to me, "Are you going in the convent?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe I am."
Oh my God. So a priest talked you into going to the convent. I didn't know
Yes,
that,
he did.
Sister Suzanne.
Took me completely by surprise.
Oh man,
Wow.
that is crazy. Now, how, like, obviously it's a different time and era back then, right? So how long ago was this?
I went in the convent in 1963.
This
Oh,
week we sit
sorry
down.
about
That
that.
was a few years ago.
Yeah, that is a few years ago.
Yep.
So you go in the convent, right? But it's something that it wasn't that you didn't believe in it, right? Because obviously you still have a passion for faith,
Oh,
right?
I always had a strong faith, never questioned that. So.
The convent, right? All right, here we go. Now we're on here. Okay, sorry about all that, guys. I'm trying to get things going on our end here. So you're in the convent. You don't know if it's right for you, right? Because we talked about that in the videos that we've seen. We talked about, or we've seen that you didn't know if it was your path or your calling. So you get out. Now, from there, we're talking about your opioid prescription, right? The medications. What led you into the pain that you were going to see the doctors for? How'd you get to that point?
Well, I was experiencing dizziness, blurred vision, so something was going on. So I went to the doctors and was diagnosed with MS. I went for a second opinion to the head of a MS clinic at UMass, who confirmed the diagnosis. So I assumed I had MS. So I treated myself. I was teaching school. I have a family, a husband and 2 children. And I was treating myself with Avonex every Friday afternoon. I'd give myself an injection, and it would make me sick for the weekend. So most weekends I spent in bed trying to get ready to go back to school on Monday morning. So I'd get up on Sunday night, do what I needed to do, go to school on Monday, teach all week, and on Friday I would do exactly the same thing. I did that for over 5 years. And then I had a stroke is what happened. And so I was actually in a coma, and I was life flighted to Boston, to Mass General. I was admitted. As I said, I had a bleed in my brain, and I had nothing that would indicate that I should have a stroke. I was not overweight. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink, nothing. I didn't have high blood pressure. And so after the fact, doctors think that what might have happened is, since I didn't have MS and was being treated with several drugs for MS, they think that the interaction may have caused my stroke. May have is the important word there. And really, it doesn't matter what happened. But when I was in the coma, my husband said to the doctor taking care of me, it was a Friday afternoon, he said, "What should I do about her injection?" for MS. And the doctor said, what MS? He said, your wife doesn't have MS. So of course, my husband's his jaw dropped, I imagine. I was in a coma, so I know none of what's going on. So I finally, when I came out of the coma, which I did, thank God, spent a while in rehab trying to get ready to walk again. And it took me a long time to actually believe I didn't have MS, because I had, prior to my stroke, I had fallen and done some serious damage. Instead of just falling, of course, I reach up and grab the mantle. So my arm rotated and I did real damage to my right arm. And the pain never subsided. And then when I first came out of my coma, the pain was gone. So I thought, oh, well, it was worth it, I guess, because my pain is gone. But it gradually came back. And that's when I found out that I had RSD, also called complex regional pain syndrome. And it just causes constant, unrelenting pain. And, I had been on fentanyl for some of the symptoms of my MS. So it was just continued because I was in such constant pain. But of course, as you know, the dose that I needed kept increasing and increasing and increasing. And it really didn't take care of my pain. So it was not working. And I mean, in the meantime, I was seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, because complex regional pain syndrome, there is no cure and there really is no treatment other than to try to deal with the pain. So I stayed on the fentanyl, well, as you said, for over 20 years. And finally, I was missing, I can't even tell you what it did to my life. Between my pain and my fentanyl use, I would get up every morning, and I go to mass every morning. So I would get up, leave the house by 7:15 to go to mass, come home. I would rush around my house, do every single thing that I needed to do in the morning, because by noontime every day, I had to go back to bed. And it wasn't just that I was tired, it was that I could not physically hold my body upright any longer. I had all I could do to make it till noontime. I got to the point where I would watch the clock and think, God, please don't make me go back to bed before noontime. I just emotionally couldn't handle that. I kept thinking if I could make it till noontime, at least it was afternoon. But so I would get everything done that needed to be done, my housework, the laundry, whatever I needed to do. And then I would be totally done and I would go to bed. Thank God my husband is a good cook, so he would most nights get dinner. I would get up and have dinner and go back to bed. So I come from a very large Irish Catholic family. I have nieces and nephews. I have 6 sisters and 3 brothers. So there was always a party of some sort or a celebration, but not many of them take place in the morning. Mm-hmm. So therefore I missed family weddings. I missed graduations. I missed showers. I missed funerals. I missed anything that took place in the afternoon time. And of course, that also meant that most of the time my husband missed it too, because even though I would say to him, you go ahead, he felt guilty. And that's an important thing to realize. Diseases like this affect the entire family. It's not just the person who has them. So, I was getting no relief. And so I didn't know what to do. And I, as I said, I have many nieces and nephews. And one of my nephews is involved with cannabis. Sherry knows him, Sean Curley. And he finally, Sean?
Yes, very well.
Sean is now at the list of my favorite nephews for obvious reasons. So he finally said to his mother, I don't want to tell Aunt Sue what to do, but I really believe that if she would use some cannabis, it really would ease her pain. And so finally, my sister called me and said, and so I finally said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I had brothers who never stopped using cannabis while we were growing up. And a couple of them tried to convince me right along that I should be using it. And I just couldn't do it. And I also my primary care physician is a very, very religious man. Matter of fact, when I go to the doctors, I have to remind myself to call him by doctor instead of father, because he reminds me so much of a priest. And I just could not bring myself to bring it up to him, because I felt embarrassed to do so. So finally, he actually said to me, and I can still hear him saying it, he said, I would be remiss as your physician if I thought there was something that could help you and I didn't make it available to you. So he said, I really think that you should give it a try. And he said, I'll be honest. He said, I don't know. He's almost my age, not quite, but he said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you to take or how to take it. But he said, he said, somebody should be able to help you. So I got my card. So I'm all excited. I think, okay, I'm going to get some relief. So I went to the local dispensary and I go in and I start to say, okay, here are some of my symptoms that I would like to get relief for. I say, could you give me some help? He just kind of shrugged his shoulders and walked away from me. So my brothers had told me about gummies. So I said, okay, I said that I'll take it a packet of the lowest dose, the smallest number of gummies that I can buy. So I bought this little packet. I'm all proud of myself. I think, okay, now I've finally taken that step. I'm going to get some relief. So I brought them home and I put them in the refrigerator and they sat there because I didn't know what to do. So finally, I thought one day I was having a really bad day. So I thought, well, I'll try one and see what happens. So I did. It did absolutely nothing. So I said, well, this isn't going to work. So finally, I talked to my nephew myself and he said, he said, I have a friend. He said, she was involved in a company called the Green Nurses. And he said, I honestly think that she could really give you some help. So I say, okay, I'll give it a try. So he said, okay, he gave me the website. So I went online and twice I filled out the medical history form. And both times I hit send and who knows who got it, somebody maybe, but not I had the same luck you have sometimes. But anyway, So the Green Nurses did not get it. So I said, well, so finally I pick up the phone. So I call Sherry and I tell her who I am. And I said, I really think I need some help. But I told her I filled it out and I said, I don't have the energy to sit at the computer again and retype it. So she said, oh, that's okay. I'll take it over the phone. So I went through my entire medical history, which is kind of complicated. And she must have written it down. And she said, I will get back to you tomorrow. And she said, we can give you some help. I know we can. So sure enough, as always, she promised to call me the next day. So of course she did. And she said, okay, she said, we've gone over your case. And she said, here's what we think you should take. And then she said, and here's why. And that to me was extremely important. I'm a retired chemistry teacher. So I have my PhD from Boston College. So I needed to know, like, why is this going to help me? How's it going to work? What's it going to do? And as Sherry mentioned, one of my biggest concerns in starting this is, okay, I'm going to start taking, cannabis instead of opioids. So as I decrease my opioid use, I bet my cannabis use is going to increase. I figured I'm going to be scaling this up. I'm going to be just as addicted to this as to fentanyl, which amazingly enough did not happen. And it actually took me 18 months to get off of fentanyl. And that's a whole other story.
We're going to talk about that.
Yes.
Talk about stigma associated with the use of fentanyl. Every single month, my dose of fentanyl was changing because my doctor was doing it the right way and was slowly decreasing. Every single month when I went to the drugstore, there was a problem with my insurance because the dose had changed. They didn't even notice that it was going down. So therefore, this must be a good thing. So every single month, my doctor had to recontact the insurance company. I had to talk to them. It was just torture. And if I had not been as determined, I would have said, you know what, forget this. I'll just stay on fentanyl. It's a lot easier. And I really honestly think that for my insurance company, that would have been easier.
Yeah.
That
oh my God, Suzanne, I love you. You're like everybody's grandma right now. I just want to cry, like just like, oh my God, Here's an issue. We're talking about fentanyl for 20 years, and you're talking about your insurance company, right?
You want to come off of it. That's the part that's so bizarre. You're trying to come off of fentanyl and they're making it hard for you to decrease your dose.
They made it very, very difficult. And it's still hard for me to understand why. And I do think that there might be other people in the same situation that just say, forget this. This is not worth the embarrassment of going, you go up to try to get your prescription filled and everybody in line knows there's an issue because, they're calling. I mean, it's humiliating and there's no reason for it.
Right. I mean,
saving the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not though. I mean, that's the sad part is the system isn't rigged to save money. You know what I mean? It's to keep you, to keep the system rolling.
Right.
Whatever belief you want to have on that, however you believe the pharmaceuticals work this industry, that's on you. But honestly, like, it doesn't make them any money for people to not be sick. So healing people, getting people back on their feet is not something they want to do. They want to keep you on a drug for a while. But the problem is like you said, it's not that your doctor did anything wrong. It sounds like you had a really good doctor. It's just when you're working with things, and this is something we talk about with cannabis a lot, especially with Sherry, is that everybody's different, right? So there is ways to work and goals that doctors set with their patients, right? But to see someone on fentanyl, right, and to get off fentanyl, that's a whole crazy story. And the amount of fentanyl that you're on, and that, I can't imagine the pain, because for people who don't know about RSD, which you pretty much explained earlier, it's one of the most painful. Is it a disease? I mean, is that what it's considered? I mean, it's one of the most painful diseases that you could pretty much have. And for you to be taking 400, and I want to confuse people with milligrams, or it's micrograms, right?
Micrograms.
With Sherry, like we were talking about this before, and this is a question I want to ask because I know a lot of people are listening, and everybody in the comments. I just want to say hi to you, Shannon, John. Thank you guys for being involved, because they bring up a lot of great points about how, this is how the medical system used to deal with people. And we still have these issues today, which, there's a bunch of things we talk about with the reason why. But fentanyl, right? 400 micrograms. So, and that's every 36 hours. Now, Sherry, we were talking about this before, and when they were using fentanyl, they were using it in dentistry, right? So you were telling me
use it in the operating room. So I used to be an operating room, a recovery room nurse, and also work in the intensive care unit. And a lot of times we would put people on fentanyl drips. When people go into the operating room, it's one of the strongest narcotics, and that's what they use for pain. They put people on specific drips to keep them out. And so this is something so to have this patch on, it's like so high. It's such a high concentration. It's just like morphine, higher concentration of morphine. So the 400 micrograms of fentanyl every 36 hours is equivalent to 36 milligrams of morphine an hour.
This is ridiculous.
That's a lot.
For Suzanne to still be here, you know what I mean? And then you were talking about your issues. So it's like when you're, this is another common thing is misdiagnoses, right? So you're misdiagnosed with MS. You're put on medications for MS, which could lead you to the issues you had, which was a stroke and a coma, right? Which finally they figured that out. So your poor body now, stroke, coma, these are all side effects of medications, guys. These are all side effects of big pharma medications. They literally own the healthcare. Unfortunately, doctors, and again, and Sherry could talk to you about this a little bit, and it's like everything, right? You go to the doctor's office, there's a line out there, they're trying to get people in and out, and they're just trying to do the basics of what they know really quick, and does it work or not? A lot of times, no, and you come back, and it becomes an issue. But after 20 years of trying to help somebody, misdiagnose somebody, it really kind of shines a light onto our healthcare system here. But the best thing is, I want to point out is cannabis use, right? You had a doctor who was for it, right? They had no idea anything about it, and encouraged you to go on to it. And again, big shout out to Sean, man. Sean's awesome. We knew him from Sensi Mag back in the day, so he's doing some great things. And for him to bring somebody into, like you, to bring it to you, one of my biggest questions was, I mean, obviously being of religion and having, the upbringing that you had, how hard was it for Sean to convince you at this point? I mean, it's cannabis, right? I mean, where was your mind? Because I mean, obviously, you must have had a stigma built in for this. I mean, these are the questions I have for our elder community, right? When they're trying to make a decision on crossing that line, because obviously you must have been what we consider pre-programmed with these stigmas, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was so grateful that there was going to be anything, any ounce of hope, I would take it.
Mm.
So I think Sean knew that I was at that point.
It's amazing that he had to. Well, thank you for Sean for realizing this, but it's amazing that you had to wait to get to that point to just actually be like whatever works at this point,
That's
right?
exactly right.
But I mean, so this
And
happens.
there's so many
right?
people too. There's so many people that that's the last resort. Like, why is it a last resort for so many people? You know what I mean? Like,
there's people talking about
lack of knowledge. They don't understand that this is available, or they don't believe that it could actually do what I can attest that it absolutely can do.
Yeah.
Sorry, yep.
I'm kind of like on the other screen, so everything's a little bit the chats
blurry.
are going again. Huge shout out to everybody in the chat. People talking about fibromyalgia. People are really interested in this topic. It's a great topic.
Yes.
Misdiagnoses, right? My mom suffered from, we were talking about prior to the show, my mom was a nurse. She does not believe in cannabis. I really hope she's watching today, because I try to tease her with this show for tomorrow, right? Because, when people are in the medical field, it's like Sherry said, and a quick little blurb about Sherry, her mom was not a believer either until she heard, was it this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
my mom actually blocked me on Facebook and wrote me out of her will. This is a fact.
Does that mean
I have
you have
all
inheritance with me?
I know, you're so sweet. But no, she's back. I'm back in the will. And the reason why I'm back in the will is because she saw your show. The first interview that I did with you, I sent her that clip and she literally decided to try it. It took a while to get her up to her, for her to get her therapeutic benefit, but it was your story that allowed my mom to start using the plant.
Well, I told you right at the beginning, if I could help one other person understand and get the kind of relief that I've gotten, that this whole thing would be worth it.
So now
cheers.
So I don't mean to interrupt. Big hi to Timothy Fair from Cannabis Solutions. He just popped in on us. We're talking about Sister Suzanne's amazing story. And Tim has a great recovery story. A lot of us have a great recovery stories through opioids, drugs. But you had a great point that I want to touch base on, and people are talking about as well. So there's two big issues here. One is the system, and the other one's insurances, right? Because you like literally your insurance company sees that you're trying to wean off fentanyl, is like, wait, no, this ain't right? But we've talked about it in our states where we have insurance issues like this, and we also have the systematic issues where your doctor will see this, or if it's drugs or something where somebody got in trouble with the police with, right? It's usually some sort of program they're in that won't allow cannabis use. So when they actually use cannabis, it actually helps them or benefits them, whether it's a Suboxone or methadone clinic or some of these other programs meant for like the other opioid drugs that we have issues with in this country, right? You get kicked out. You can't use cannabis. It's and then at that point these guys risk going back to jail. They risk the fines, right? Or they risk in these drug programs. Are they helping them, right? So should we, I mean, Sherry, this is the question I have. I mean, we're hearing this crazy story.
I'm going to tell you,
be open-minded to this.
Yes, it should. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. This is really interesting. So when I was working in primary care years ago, after I did a lot of different things in the traditional system, but I was working primary care. And when I was in primary care, if patients were on narcotics, they had a narcotic contract. Okay, really, really interesting. So they would get prescribed a certain amount of narcotics a month, and they had to sign that they would be subject to random drug screens. So if they popped positive for cannabis, then they weren't allowed to get their narcotics for the month. They had to test negative in order for them to get a prescription. That to me is horrible. I mean, that was, and interesting enough, I mean, that was the beginning of, I just, everywhere I went, you know, so even this is just so interesting, even when I was at my sickest and my worst, and I was on the Percocets and the MS content, and I was on opioid, I was on so many, 18 pharmaceuticals at one point. The same story came to me. You need to sign a narcotic contract if you want to continue to get these. And I said, no way, no way, I'm not signing anything. And it's just, you know, it's like limiting your freedom to be able to take care of yourself, to make choices. So if I tested positive for cannabis, you're going to take away something that's giving me a tiny quality of life. I mean, pharmaceuticals did not work for me either. I mean, it left me in bed, sick, suffering, and suicidal. So for someone, for them to not be open, it's where we see the disconnect between health and care. Right? It's not a healthcare system, you know, so total healthcare, THC, it incorporates the biopsychosocial spiritual aspects of healing. It's not just about the disease. It's not just about the symptom. It's about the whole person. And that's where the huge disconnect, there's a huge disconnect. And we truly see as cannabis nurses that the future of healthcare is patient empowerment. And it's starting in the communities, just like what we're doing now, having these conversations, sharing information, sharing compelling stories of healing. And it's through that connection that we're having, you know, that connection that I had with the 70-year-old nurse who encouraged me to smoke when I first started using cannabis medically. The first thing, what did it bring us? It brought us hope, right? The hope that there is something out there that could possibly work because we had a little bit of relief. And once you have that hope, what does it do? It brings you inspiration. And what does being inspired mean? It means being in spirit. So you have that hope and the inspiration to think about doing something differently. And then the growth comes when you start implementing these things to bring about change. And then healing isn't the absence of illness or disease, but it's doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now. And cannabis, for Suzanne, bridged the gap from what she was not getting from traditional medicine. It allowed her to come off of these dangerous, harmful opioids. And she's truly using this plant to its highest therapeutic potential, but she's also using the traditional system too. So that's the point that, you know, the other point we wanted to mention is that cannabis isn't an end all be all. She's using that. It's replaced a certain set of her pharmaceuticals, but she's also using a traditional care to manage other aspects of her health. So that's the important part that we want people to know as well, right, Suzanne?
Absolutely. You know, I also want to mention, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, I have some neurotransmitters implanted and those still work. I mean, they're still going, you know, they help somewhat with the pain. You also know that I go for a lidocaine infusion every month, and that does help, and I haven't stopped that. We've debated it, but I haven't stopped it yet. I don't want to push it. I still use, you know, I see my regular doctors. I still do some of the other normal medications that one would take. So it's not either or. The other thing I want to point out, people have to understand, just as medicine did not cure what I have, neither does marijuana. I still have the same condition. It just, my pain is manageable and more than manageable. You know, I have a full life now. My life has changed drastically. I mean,
tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you do now. Tell us what your days are like.
Well, today, for example, I worked on face masks. I'm making them. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old grandson, and I'm making them for them. And we have Valentine's Day is coming, and you probably haven't looked far ahead, but so is St. Patrick's Day is coming. Yeah. So I had to, I made Valentine's Day masks for them and for their friends. So I make, and their classmates. My 6-year-old is in the 1st grade, and he's in school full time. He lives in New Hampshire, and he gets so excited. He'll come home from school and he'll say, "Mom, so-and-so had on their astronaut mask. Somebody else had on their Halloween one. Somebody else had their snowmen." And he goes through what everybody had on for face masks. And then he's also gets excited when he has whatever they have on. So I have made face masks. I've made a dozen for each of them in both St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day. And then my next ones are going to be, they like cars and trucks. So we're going to do some cars and trucks. I've got some turtle ones started. So they get so excited. You know, it's hard for a 2-year-old to put on a face mask, but when at least it's something that he likes, it makes it an awful lot easier. And when he and his big brother have the same one on, life is good. So that's what I've been doing between face masks. And then I've been doing a lot of knitting. I'm a knitter. So I've been knitting sweaters, blankets, baby hats, prayer shawls. I like to be busy.
And then what about your garden in the summertime? Okay, let's talk about that.
Summertime, I grow flowers and I grow them for the altar at church. This past summer, I had the most beautiful dahlias. I mean, they were breathtaking. And so I spend as much time as I can. I go out every single day in my garden. We have we have over an acre. So we have a swimming pool, flowers all around it, several other gardens. I have gardens everywhere. So nothing makes me happier than to be outside working in my garden, you know, and I had let my gardens go. I had no gardens for a while. Now I'm back full time. I could be a gardener now in my next job. Although, I forgot, I'm retired for good.
Hey, Suzanne, have you ever thought about growing?
Yeah.
We
should start a grow. We should start
right.
a special garden in your backyard. If you've got an acre of land.
My problem is I only like to use the tinctures.
Yeah.
Well, we can find someone to make the tinctures for you.
Well, I'm a chemistry major. What else can I say?
Right.
I'll set up my lab downstairs too. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome.
Garage just for safety purposes. What do you think?
You know what? I think this summer, we might have a fun summer project this summer.
Yes, we should do something like that. Especially, I mean, look at you. You're glowing. You're literally glowing. You're telling us a story about how you were coming home and you take your medicine and literally go to bed. And you're missing out on life. Now you're telling us stories of gardening and just living a full life and enjoying your grandkids, which is, you know, how much better does that get? Now, the hardest part of all this had to be a transition, right? You were talking about was like an 18-month transition to
18 months.
Wean off, right?
Yep.
People, I hear horror stories about, you know, one of the hardest part about opioids is the transition, right? Weaning off. And then with cannabis, you know, we were talking about, and that was my next question was what were the products that we were using for most people out there? So it wasn't a vape cart, right? I mean, you guys approached what you needed. You guys devised a special plan, which is amazing. Because, you know, we talk about FICOs and RSOs and different ways to consume cannabis, right? Like whether you're smoking or, like you said, tincture oils, right? And how these work for you and how, and the biggest thing for me is and I think people who've never tried it before is what to expect. Like, what's the feeling we're looking for? Because I think sometimes people might get a little disappointed with it. Sherry talks about microdosing a lot, and you know, even with her segments today with heart health, right? It's not necessarily about, you know, getting high, right? It's about managing your problems, and then, you know, microdosing is a huge help with that. So what was your regimen? What worked for you, and how hard was it to make that transition back to basically normal life?
Took me a long time to I had to make myself slow down in the morning because I found I was still rushing around trying to get everything done, thinking, okay, I've only got till noontime. And then all of a sudden it kind of dawned on me, wait a minute, I'm not going to bed at noontime anymore. I'm actually staying up. It's just such an amazing, you know, just something that people take for granted. You know, it was like a gift to me. And I can't tell you how simple it was. All I do, just so people will know, I'm not a smoker. I have never smoked a cigarette. I could not smoke anything. So what I do what Sherry tells me to do.
Well, we do it together.
Well, I would be clueless to be perfectly honest. And it's not that I'm not, I mean, I can read, but I would have had to spend that's not what I wanted to do. So I let you do it for me. I really appreciate it. So all I do is when I get up in the morning, I put 3 drops of 2 different things under my tongue. I do that in the morning. I do it at noontime. I do it after dinner. And then when I'm going to bed, I take a few drops of something different, but that's all it is. It's no different than giving yourself eye drops. Couldn't be any simpler. And as Sherry mentioned, I think before, the important thing to me is as I gradually came off the fentanyl, I did not have to increase. I still do my 3 drops and 3 drops. Works for me.
And I can tell you what they are too. So her daytime drops are a 3-to-1. So 3 parts CBD, 1 part THC, and her nighttime drops are a 1-to-1. 1 part THC, 1 part CBD, and it's whole plant medicine.
No, and those are amazing because it's we really want to talk to people about what works too, and what you can expect and how it can work for you, which is the biggest question everybody has, right? And then finding the right products, which is the second hardest thing to do, is find the quality products, right? A lot of these you can make yourself. Like you were saying, gardening, right? We got to start a little, Sister Suzanne garden series with you. I mean,
that would be awesome.
My sign, I'll start making my sign right away.
That would be great. Oh my God.
I mean, it's really remarkable about, like you said, how it's impacted your life, and what you're requiring right now isn't something that people can't manage, right? It's not like it's a plethora of drugs. It's not like it's this huge list of things 3 times a day you're taking, and like you said, you're conked out from noontime until you wake up the next morning. And those are the things we hate to hear, right? Your family to see this, people around you, people who love and support you, must have hated seeing you go through this, which is remarkable for your family to have the cannabis support that you had around you as well. Because I can't imagine if you were in a different style of family, you've never made that transition, right? Sean would never come to you and said, hey, I can't see you like this no more, which is, for all of us who are the activists, and for a lot of us, this is why we're here. You know what I mean? So I'm sure this is why Sherry's a nurse. Tim's the same thing. We believe in what the plant has to offer. We believe in what it can do. The people leaning off opioids is the hardest thing, I think, right? And how to get there is the craziest thing. Now, the question I've been burning to ask you the whole show, and what I kind of start off with and teased everybody with is, what would Jesus say? I mean, here's a whole nother topic I want to give you a few minutes to discuss, because us cannabis activists are like, yeah, Jesus was smoking on the cross. You know what I mean? It's part of our culture, right? And then there must have been a stigma. There has to be a stigma, right? So before you got sick, I can only imagine the stigmas that you must have had yourself towards cannabis, right? Now, what would Jesus say?
You know what? He expects us to do everything we can to help ourselves. And I honestly do believe that he put that plant on earth for a reason, just like everything else. We have misused it seriously. That's our fault. It doesn't diminish the value of the plant at all. So he would want us to use whatever's available to us. And to me, this was available to me, and I'm so grateful that it was. And I'm glad that I had the nerve to take advantage of it. And that I had one of my little bit of pushy nephews. Thank God he did. He changed my life. He really did.
Sounds awesome, man. No, and that's what it takes, right?
Suzanne, really?
Go ahead.
I just want to ask one question. So the other thing that's important too is when you were going to church, because you were going to church and you were showing up at church in severe, severe pain. And over the course of months, as you started using cannabis, people started to see you differently.
Yes, they did.
Right? And then didn't they have questions for you?
Oh, they did. I didn't believe how bad I looked. And when I look at pictures now of me a while ago, I mean, I'm frail, I'm thin, I look ill, which I was. And so I am, as you mentioned, I am very active in my church. I am frequently on the altar. I served Mass this morning, for example. If I'm not serving, I'm frequently reading. And people that I had never met before came up to me and they asked me finally what was different. They said, you're standing taller, your voice is louder, you look so different, you just seem more enthused. And so I tell everybody exactly what, including the priest. I'm very honest. Matter of fact, I would hope that he would maybe at some point take advantage of it, but he's a little bit reluctant. He has Parkinson's disease.
Ooh.
And I'm not gonna, I have discussed it with him and he's not ready.
Well, all you can do is give him the education, right, and point him in a direction. So when he's ready, he'll look just like you, right? It took something to be ready, right?
Yes,
As long as you put the education out there. I mean, Parkinson's disease, there's another rough one, right? But cannabis does help in it. There is research to back that. I'm sure Sherry could talk about that a little bit. But oh man, what advice do you have to say to most people, especially when they're breached with these questions and concerns? I mean, you must have been asking yourself a million reasons, like why, how, or concerns with health and side effects, just like any other thing that you're taking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And one of the most important things to me was Sean getting me in touch with the green nurses. I still would be at a loss. I'd still have my little packet of gummies. I'd still be on fentanyl. And it's not that I don't read, I do. And I read scientific journals, but I didn't have, just didn't have the energy to put into researching cannabis. And, I think I'm going to leave that up to Sherry. Mm-hmm. The other thing I do want to mention is whenever, things change, whenever, like if I wasn't feeling quite great, when I talk to Sherry, I tell her. And so it's okay to say to her, you know what, I think I need a little bit of an adjustment. And that's the value. Anytime I call, I have never called her that she hasn't either answered the phone or gotten back to me like within an hour. Never. And I just wish everybody would be aware. And that's why I'm happy to share my story. If I can increase awareness of the green nurses and the work that they do to help people, it's essential. And, doctors don't seem to be aware.
No. That's the other issue we talk about a lot on our show with a lot of guests, and it's the insurance companies and just the medical field in general. We worked hard with Sherry lately to really help people educate on your endocannabinoid system. Right? We're talking about receptors. You had receptor transplant? Like, how is that even possible? I heard that.
She's got a machine. She's got a machine that's implanted in her body. Tell them about that, Suzanne.
I actually have 2 implanted.
There you go.
One of the things that worked for me, that helped me, was I had a neurotransmitter implanted. Actually, my pain management person is the head of the pain clinic at Brigham and Women's. And fortunately, I ended up in his clinic, and he realized that I have a neurotransmitter implanted. And what it does is it helps to block the transmission of pain. Again, it doesn't get rid of it. It just helps my brain not to receive the pain signals. And Sherry can correct me, but with RSD, what they think might happen is it might change the cellular structure of the pain receptors in your brain so that they don't realize that whatever was causing the pain is gone. So it's like the switch remains opened. And
on-off switch. Yep.
Right. And I also want to mention that originally it was my right arm where I had the RSD, and the neurotransmitter was really helping with that. And then unfortunately, the receptors for your other limbs are in the same area. And with RSD, it can actually travel, so that in addition now to my right arm, it has traveled to all 4 limbs. So when that happened, the effectiveness of my neurotransmitters decreased, because instead of just having to cover one, originally I could control it and I could change the setting for my hand, for both parts of my arm, for my shoulder. I had different channels. Well, unfortunately, when it moved to all of my limbs, they had to change it so that it would cover all of them. So now it's just like my right arm, my left arm. And so instead of being able to take, my hands separately, if I change the setting, it's for my entire limb, and that's not as effective anymore. But on the other hand, I need it for all 4 limbs, so I have no choice. And it does work, and it does help. It does not take the pain away, and it became less and less effective. So I still have it, and I don't want to think where I would be if I didn't have it. But between that and my lidocaine infusions and what Sherry has helped me with, life is good.
It's amazing. It truly is an amazing story. For people who missed the beginning of it, let's recap it real quick. We're going to go into Sherry's segment here. 20 years on opioids, misdiagnosed. And I mean, this is where all these questions come in. It's like, how much money was spent through healthcare for you over this period of time? You know what I mean? How many drugs were you? I mean, it's bad to me. I know I spent a little bit of time within the pharmaceutical industry. I was up to 7 or 8 drugs at a time, and like more than half of just for side effects. Scary. Yeah. This is what we hear a lot about when people are usually in the system, because the side effects are so horrendous, which blows my mind why cannabis isn't really more considered, researched or implemented in a lot of these situations, especially ones of like yours, Sherry's, and even Tim's. As far as anything we can use it, myself as well. I had head injuries, so and it remarkably helps me in many different ways, which is why we share all of our stories, right? Which is why we're all here. But that for you must have been ridiculous, and that's all I think about is our industry. Do you see a problem with our industry, or is it just lack of training? I mean, what do you think that led to you this is gonna be a hard question, I guess, because you believe in your system and you still believe that it probably works for you, but where's our system lacking? I mean, 20 years, Sue, that's a long time. You know what I mean? It's a long time to try to get it right. It's a long time to see somebody, like you said, like the pain of your family, to see you in bed all the time. And to the point where even people that you go to church with have noticed this, right? People can see the improvements, right? How do you feel about our medical system right now?
Well, I still trust it to a certain extent, but I have always felt that we need to keep ourselves informed. We need to make sure that we're making informed decisions. And, with my MS diagnosis, I thought I was making an informed decision. As I said, I went for a second opinion because that's what you're supposed to do. And, you go for a second opinion. And as I said, I actually went to the head of the MS clinic at UMass. So I felt very confident. Like, wasn't I lucky? I got to see the boss, the big guy. And so he assured me, yes, I had MS. So I say, okay, I have it. And when I think of how long I actually believed it and went through what I went through, and, I guess I should be glad I had the stroke, because I found out that I didn't have the MS, kind of a big price to pay to get a proper diagnosis. But the other thing, since we're talking about insurance, the other thing that bothers me, and I've mentioned this to Sherry, we are fortunate, my husband and I, we're retired teachers. We have, we don't have a lot of bills. I can afford to use for my cannabis medication, but I think of all the people who can't, and how long is it going to take insurance companies to actually admit that this is a legitimate treatment for certain conditions, and therefore they're going to have to start covering it, because there must be many people who would like to give it a try but just cannot afford to do it. And I know that there are some pathways, but it's still, the insurance companies, they were perfectly happy to pay for my fentanyl and my Avonex injections that had to be shipped to me every week under refrigeration. That was okay for something I didn't have. And then, there's no reimbursement, as you well know, for anything in the cannabis field.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things we talk about here all the time. And I love hearing Tim's and Sherry's, dispute on this, because it's like, we are funding an opioid industry through insurance companies, right? If you want to, however you look at it,
exactly,
right?
However you want to look at it.
So, and so many patients come on with these stories that, thank God you're in the position that you are. Like you said, not everybody is in this position, right? Like I see on Facebook, I see on social media, and my heart wants to cry to see people in struggling positions that can't get access to, can't find consistently, not even access to, but quality access to. Like, some of these dispensaries are not giving out products that should be given to patients, right? We're seeing recalls in some of these places for contaminants. We're seeing molds. We're seeing, I mean, these are issues that this is why we need to educate you people that who are tuning in and the people who are interested in cannabis on these concerns as just as much as anything, right? So, you know, like we discuss all the time, there's no side effects, right? You don't need to go run out and get 18 medications for all the craziest side effects you hear on TV, you know, death, anal leakage, all these things I can't wait to get and have, you know what I mean? Like, well, I mean, when you hear on TV with some of these advertisements that are going to enhance your life and make it so much better, it doesn't sound like very much fun to me, you know? And like you said, smoking a joint, going hanging out with my grandkids, or consuming some tinctures or some edibles, that sounds like a better party to me. Your story's amazing. It really, it's heart wrenching, and I think everybody sits back and thinks about their grandparents in this situation, or somebody, their family members, or somebody they've seen in pain. And I think, you know, the biggest thing for everybody is like what Sean did for you. You know, I mean, even if you reach out, get educated, right? You know, number one, you know, there's many ways of doing that. There's shows like this. There's tons of podcasts that cover awesome topics. There's the Green Nurses. There's the American Cannabis Nurse Associations. There's the Cannabis Nursing Network. There's all these awesome paths for information where people are actually looking into the science. They're taking out the BS. They're kind of swimming through the what ifs and the maybes and trying to get to real science. You know, a lot of it is still in the early workings, right, Sherry? I mean, the endocannabinoid system, we talk about this all the time, is new to our medical field. So hopefully, you know, our doctors being more lenient like yours were, Suzanne, right? Being more open-minded. Because I mean, imagine if your doctor was like, no, it's not something that you should try. Because you probably wouldn't have even gone that route.
No, I've heard people say to me that that's what their doctor has said to them.
Which, I mean, that's what closed the door. No matter what Sean would tell you, you know what I mean? You would probably say no. My doctor said no. You know, I mean, this is what we talk about with Sherry all the time. The most trusted industry in the world has to be the medical profession, right? Your doctor, whether it's a quick clear clinic, you know what I mean, or and you know, like you said, you always go for that second opinion. But when that second opinion agrees with that first opinion, and you're just suffering. Man, it's got to be difficult. And I've seen, you know, I personally have family members that have gone through years of MS. Actually, I've had a cousin who was diagnosed with MS, who could barely walk, who could barely function and talk and everything. And, you know, it worked for her. She moved, you know what I mean? This was a few years ago, and it was just a misdiagnosis. So they changed her medication. She walked home. She walked out. She started driving again. She has a normal life. And I mean, and that's not necessarily a cannabis story, but it's a misdiagnosis story, right? It's, hey, we got it wrong. And she lived most of her young adult life in this kind of misery like you had, you know what I mean? Just couldn't go for a walk, couldn't go to the mall, couldn't go play sports, couldn't, you know what I mean? She was in a wheelchair most of the time. When she could walk, it was yay, you know what I mean? Like, it was a huge accomplishment for her, right? Now imagine if we knew about cannabis back then. Imagine if, you know, the medical system would take a little bit more time, like Sherry says, and sits down and gets to know patients a little bit more, works with them, and sees what's working and what's not. And when it's not working, don't just crank up the dosages of the stuff you gave them, right? Like the fentanyl thing blows my mind, because when we talk about fentanyl, the thing I don't think about is the medical industry, right? Like, obviously, it's in the medical industry. Heroin was used in the medical industry, right? Cannabis was also used in the medical industry years ago. But when we talk about fentanyl, to me, it's what's killing people in our opioid industry, right? It's the one thing that really kind of like, every time I hear the word, I just kind of, it sickens me, right? When people get caught with fentanyl, right? And then we're cutting drugs with it, and that's one of our leading, you know, issues with overdoses. Now to hear a prescribed fentanyl dosage of what they gave you just blows my mind, right? And again, we touched base on
fentanyl. Nobody had ever even heard the word fentanyl.
And like you said, 20 years of it also. I mean,
it was a general anesthetic. That's why it was used. It's used in general anesthesia.
You know, it was the only pain medication that gave me any relief at all. Honestly, you know, I tried all the others, none of them worked. So finally, that's what they settled on, and that's what they went with, and just kept increasing my dose.
Because you were dead. You were like right on the borderline of dying. Like, it just kills me to understand this. And oh man, and up till what, a year ago. So is now, Sherry, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, are they still prescribing fentanyl in the medical industry?
Yes, they are. Fentanyl patches. Yep, they do.
Right. And then now, so Susan, that was one of the main questions I want to ask you was how are you taking fentanyl? I mean, because we see powders, we see needles, we see liquids, right? We talk about patches.
I use patches.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
put
man.
my patches on and forgot about it. And
Unreal. I'm at a loss for words at a lot of it when I think about just what you were going through. And when I hear stories, like, again, this panel's full of stories, and it just breaks my heart for all you guys, and it makes me love all of you. Suzanne, we're gonna be switching gears to Sherry's little segment here for heart health today. We're gonna get to Tim, and we're gonna go over a bunch of the laws and talk about some medical issues and things we saw this week going on. So please stay with us. But obviously, you have an amazing story, and you're kind of new to the cannabis thing. If somebody wants to reach out to you to get some hope and inspiration, and just to talk to you about your story, what's the best way should people do it?
best thing for me is to call me.
Oh,
I am open to, as a matter of fact, my primary care physician has me call patients who are reluctant, to just tell them my story. So I do it kind of regularly.
That's
And
amazing.
I always talk about the green nurses because I don't know how to tell them how to deal with it otherwise. So thank God for the green nurse. That is the truth. I mean, where else would you turn? Like, what do you do? I don't know. I didn't know.
No, I mean,
I'm pretty well informed. I had no clue what to do or where to go.
well, we're on
The
the
doctor
show.
what to tell me. He didn't know about the green nurses until I told him about them. True.
Well,
oh
we can
goodness.
change that.
I'm gonna tell you really.
Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Really quickly, well, that's the part that's interesting too, Suzanne, is that when I first started my cannabis journey, I wish there was a green nurse for me. It took me 2 years how to figure out how to make cannabis work for me. And I'm a smart woman. I worked, at these 3 big hospitals in Boston. I had a huge, great job, medical center specialist, clinical nurse liaison, worked at Children's Hospital, Brigham and Women's, and the Beth Israel Deaconess. And when I was sick and suffering and down and out, I didn't know how to do it either. And when I sat there with my bags of flour and gummies and all the tinctures and everything sitting in front of me, I said, if I can figure this out, you can call me the green nurse.
There you go.
Truly kidding. I was like laughing, saying, if you could find it. And then once I figured it out, I said, oh my God, I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. And so truly, it took me 2 years to figure out how to make cannabis work for me so I could medicate below the threshold of feeling impaired. That's the key. And then once I figured it out, I've actually, there's tips and tricks when we're working with patients. Like, I ask so many different questions. My intake form is obnoxious and people are like,
yes, it is.
Jesus, Sherry.
It is. I said, I typed it twice and I said, forget this. It was obnoxious. I agree. Thank you.
And I admit it. And the reason why it's obnoxious is this: the more information that I know, the better education you're going to get. And the more I'm going to be able to help you to make the choices that are appropriate for you. Right. And that's what it is I led you down a path. You gave me the information and I kept asking the questions. And in the end, it was you that actually picked out your products because you told me exactly what you needed based on our discussion. It was ask, answer, ask, answer, ask, answer. And then it was, okay, these are the choices. Which ones do you want to start with?
Perfect. Worked for me. And as I said, I tell anybody who will listen, and I can't tell you how many people still come up to me and say, something is so different. Like, what happened? Yeah. As I said, I
got on the bus
at church and discuss it with people because that's where people approach me the most because I'm up on the altar. I'm very visible. As I said, I set up for mass every morning. I serve or lecture almost every day. I lead the rosary in the morning. So I'm very visible in my parish. So, that's where people most often approach me is right in church. And I say, okay, here's what happened. Aren't I lucky? And here's what you can do. And they frequently ask me, well, can I have my brother call you? What about my uncle? I say, sure. If I can help anybody, I'm more than happy to do it. If anybody could get half the relief that I have gotten for the use of cannabis, they should be grateful because I know that I am.
Oh man, yeah, I love this. I love the story. Now, Sue, what state are you in? That's the one thing. My biggest question was, what state are you in?
Massachusetts.
Oh, perfect. I was wondering because it's like,
She's only an hour and a half away from me. So we're going to have
I
to
live
do
right
a
on Route 9. Right
There
on
you
Route
go.
9. Yep, easy to
awesome.
find.
Well,
Yep.
at least we know a lot about Mass and their medical systems and the way the state operates now, which is great. They're doing great things. Not everything's perfect, but still great things. And to hear stories like this, and now so I know you have access to medical cannabis, and you get deliveries soon, right? Which is another great thing.
That's the other thing. You know, when I need something, when I call Sherry, I have never gotten it beyond the second day, and almost always I get it the first day after I called her.
There's great caregivers in the community. They're top notch. They take care of Sister Suzanne. You know, it's amazing community. We're really, really lucky to have caregivers that, are able to make and customize and help Suzanne get what she needs.
It's another amazing story. It really is truly another amazing story, and I love everything. Again, thank you for coming on with us, because I think a lot of I've heard some amazing stories. It's always really hard for people to come on and share them, right? Because it gets personal. There's emotions behind it, and it's the hardest thing to do. So I really huge respect. I'm truly humbled. Your story is amazing, and I hope people can hear it more and more and more and more. To think a lot of people, like I said, we had a huge reaction to it. I've had people literally call me up in tears. So it's something that's personal, you know what I mean? And we see this a lot. And like you said, I've had it with my family. I think everybody has, you know what I mean? We've all seen people go through it, and to know that there's relief and that it works. And like the biggest thing everybody thinks is, that everybody's skeptical on what they see on the internet now, right? When they hear a story, when they hear a kid with seizures, they're like, that's not real. That's just the pro marijuana people, right? But they actually hear somebody sit down, see your face, and hear you tell your story. It blows me away. So again, thank you for spending time with us. Again, if you guys want to reach out to Sister Suzanne, you can call her, but we're not gonna give her phone number away.
My number.
Yeah,
What they can do is they can
the Green Nurses, and then
or actually private message in the weeds. Private message in the weeds.
Well, we'll help. But anyway, we can help get your story out. We're truly honored. Again, guys, the archive of the show will be on YouTube, and our Master of Cannabis will be shared with the Green Nurses as well. And you can find it there. And please help push it and share it, because our moms could be watching this, going, "Oh my God, I could be getting off of the medications in my cabinet right now. If she can do it, I can too." And that's the biggest thing I want to make everybody realize. If we can do it, you can too. And then be a grandma still, and be able to go play with your grandkids, and be able to function, right? And still, like you said, be a part of your church every Sunday. So the stigma's not real. The stigmas are not there. You're like, it's funny because you're talking about being, what we consider couch locked and going to bed and pretty much worthless in most of your day, you know what I mean, to being active by using cannabis, right? So it's exactly opposite the stigmas that we all discuss and talk about. So it's just a beautiful story. Thank you again. Sherry, I don't want to switch gears too fast, but we do have a great segment from you guys today about heart health, right? So today's Wellness Wednesday. We want to get you on board with the heart health, and you also had a nurse you wanted to shout out as well. So I didn't want to give you a chance to plug that, but heart health, give us a little preview.
I'll give you heart health first. Okay, so cardiovascular health. So as you all know, we're, as cannabis nurses, we're here to educate and empower, and we're pro cannabis. Truly, we know that it works, but there are specific conditions that patients need to be careful about, and cardiovascular disease is one of them. So the topic is about heart health, cannabis use, and cardiovascular disease. If you do have a cardiovascular disease, some of the considerations that you need to think of when you start to use cannabis. And truly, when we do educate about it, it's dose dependency. So when you're listening in, we're going to talk about high THC, low THC, and cardiac health, and what's important to know. And truly, it's about mitigating side effects so you can get that medicinal effect that you're looking for. So that's pretty much the topic: cardiovascular health, cannabis use, and how to use cannabis safely if you do have cardiovascular disease.
All right. Well, it's an interesting conversation. People must bring this up a lot with you, and obviously there should be general concerns with it. And didn't you discuss in the video? So guys, here it is: cardiovascular health. Can it talk? Green Nurses.
Hey guys, welcome to the Nurse Mark in the Green Nurse Canna Talk,
where we bring you hope and inspiration for growth and healing. And today we are going to be bringing you hugs and nugs of information on heart health and cannabis.
Yes, an important subject to talk about, Sherry.
Yes, it is, Mark. And the reason why is because we love to teach and educate on the endocannabinoid system, and people that are new to cannabis and that may have cardiac conditions need to understand the safety implications. So let's talk a little bit about heart disease and how cannabis may benefit people with heart disease. So Mark, what is heart disease?
So heart disease, cardiovascular disease, they include heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, angina, which is chest pain, and rheumatic heart disease. Sherry, I don't know about you, but I know there are people in my life, every one of those has been covered. Like I have people in my life that have had all of these things.
Me too, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so cardiac risk factors, if you think about it, a lot of it has to do with lifestyle. So when we talk about the endocannabinoid system, we talk about things that nourish our endocannabinoid system, which are lifestyle related. So cardiac risk factors are conditions or habits that make a person more likely to develop cardiac disease. And Mark, include things such as high blood pressure and high cholesterol.
Right. Diabetes and pre-diabetes.
Smoking, tobacco.
Being overweight or obese.
Being physically inactive.
That's the second leading cause of preventable disease, by the way.
Exercise.
And having a family history of early heart disease.
Also, women that have a history of preeclampsia during pregnancy.
And another lifestyle one, an unhealthy diet.
That fast food, fried food, fake food.
Mm-hmm.
And then age. Age has a significant factor as we get older, and women is generally 55 or older.
Right. And a lot of it has to do with the changes in hormones and everything that's going on in the body. And, and really for women, it's tough to diagnose a heart attack, right? Because most of the symptoms that the physicians are trained to look for, women don't necessarily have them, right? So it's different for women.
Absolutely. So we're going to just talk a little bit about a couple of little studies and trials. And actually what we have found out is that there's no clinical trials that have been conducted on humans that offer practical guidance to patients or providers suffering from cardiovascular illnesses. However, what I love is preclinical studies show numerous potential mechanisms by which cannabinoids of the plant may modulate or work with proper cardiac function.
Right.
So primarily CBD, THC, and beta-caryophyllene may be cardioprotective and potentially therapeutic when dealing with a number of contributing factors such as chronic stress, obesity, and inflammation.
So CBD, THC, and beta-caryophyllene may be cardioprotective with acute and chronic cardiac events, including hypoxia, which is low oxygen and poor tissue perfusion.
Arrhythmias or irregular heartbeats.
Next is angina, chest pain.
And the last one is myocardial infarction or heart attack or myocardial ischemia reperfusion injury. So basically it's lack of oxygen to specific areas of your heart due to a blockage in a main arterial vessel within your heart. So that's pretty cool. So CBD, THC, and beta-caryophyllene may be cardioprotective with acute and chronic cardiac events. So there was a study in 2013, Mark, that contrasted nearly 4,000 long-term heart attack survivors who used cannabis with those who didn't. And it found that there was no significant statistical difference in the longevity, meaning that cannabis was not a contributing factor to the lifespan if they had a heart attack. So I thought that was really, really fascinating as well.
Right. So what do we have for cannabis use studies, Sherry?
Okay, so I think this is really interesting. So the variability in cannabis type and use patterns make studies in humans really, really challenging.
Right.
Most studies look at the impact of cannabis on cardiovascular health, only control for general use patterns, not the type of cannabis, which is interesting.
Right.
The studies don't control for THC consumption or the presence of other cannabinoids. So when someone says that cannabis use increases risk for cardiovascular events, the next question should really be, what type of cannabis and how often are they consuming?
And many times there are what they call confounding factors in a study, right? Yeah. And so those are other lifestyle things or things that may contribute to that heart disease, that cardiovascular disease.
And so many research studies have been flawed. You know, some of the data is very poor. There's an adequate assessment of cannabis exposure and minimal exposure in the populations that were studied. There hasn't been control factors put in place for anyone with a pre-existing heart condition. So it just really reminds us that further research is required to determine the impact of cannabis on cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So with that being said, it is reasonable to recommend against recreational or adult use cannabis, especially in individuals with the history of coronary artery disorder. So this is why it is really, really important for people that have cardiovascular disease to be working with a health professional.
And you know, there's a couple of important things that we should note right here. And that is that in the recreational market, there are a lot of high THC products, and high THC causes a spike in heart rate. So for somebody trying to manage their heart rate, and they're usually on some pretty specific medications, right? That spike in heart rate is not necessarily a good thing. And the second thing has to do with those medications that they're on. Many of the medications, you know, there may be a drug-to-drug interaction with cannabis. So you have to be very, very, very focused,
very careful.
How you use it, what the dose is. It can still be very beneficial, but that's why we recommend not using it in the recreational market. If you want to look at it, what do you do, Sherry?
Well, here's the medical, So here's the thing too. Let's talk a little bit about THC increasing the heart rate. So, and why that happens. So when you think about it, the heart rate increases as a compensatory mechanism because cannabinoids vasodilate. So when you vasodilate, you just think you open up a blood vessel, it's going to drop. So just imagine you have a really tight hose and you unloosens. Well, guess what? The fluid is going to go down. So blood pressure drops. And that's not a bad thing.
No.
However, what it can happen as a compensatory mechanism is it can increase the heart rate by 20 to 50 beats per minute. And so that can be, that's a lot for people that already have an issue with cardiac health. So THC vasodilate increases the diameter of the blood vessel and it forces the heart to work just a little bit harder to pump out that blood.
Right.
So some reports even suggest that the heart must work 30% harder in the presence of high levels of THC. So again, this is why it is really important for people to work with clinicians and why we often promote microdosing. Right? Microdosing
for the win, Sherry.
Yes. So what are cannabis effects on arteries?
Cannabis effects on the artery is that high doses of THC are not good for arteries. CB1, cannabinoid receptor 1 activation, increases plaque buildup in arteries that can lead to heart attack and stroke.
Which is really interesting. However, low doses of THC have been shown to reduce plaque buildup and risk for atherosclerosis, which is that plaque on your arteries.
So how could that be, Sherry? How could that be that one same drug, THC, drug molecule, has a different effect at a higher and a lower dose? Well, it's because it's biphasic. It's a chemical compound that's biphasic. It means it does one thing at a high dose and another thing at a low dose. So again, goes back to what you said, and that's microdosing.
So we talk about too, the other thing we talk about is we have receptors, CB1 receptors in our brain, our central nervous system and other organs, and then CB2 receptors in our immune system and other organs. So what are the effects of CB2 receptors on cardiovascular health? Right. So there's drugs that selectively activate these CB2 receptors that have beneficial effects on our heart. So what happens when we when we activate these CB2 receptors, it reduces the inflammation and free radicals that increase the plaque buildup. Okay, so this is so cool. So it provides an anti-inflammatory effect. And basically some of the research has shown if a heart attack or stroke does occur, activating those CB2 receptors reduces the extent of damage.
Cannabis can be neuroprotective. So we don't even talk about that part of it here in the cardiac, but be aware that there's also some benefits in that realm as well.
Cardiovascular events only represent 2% of all medical reports related to cannabis.
You know what, folks? That is a wrap. Thanks for sitting in on this session of Canna Talk.
You doing, Suzanne?
I'm fine. That was interesting, very informative.
And no cats were hurt in the making of this video. Just a little thing I want to mention there. Heart health, something that we all should talk about, right? Especially when we talk about cannabis. One of the biggest things we hear about with cannabis is anxiety and that rush, right? And you were talking about it in the episode there. And then also there's that, and also the you know, is it good for me or not? You know what I mean? That question, like you know, with that, it's kind of like, you know, how would you talk to people about that when using cannabis, Sherry? Just in a little easier terms. It's a lot to take there. The words. I'm just like, whoa, heart health, cannabis. Can I use it? Is it safe?
Yeah. So generally when someone comes to us, they don't come to us, honestly, they don't come to us and say, I want to fix my blood pressure, or I have high cholesterol and I want to work on that. Generally, the people come to us, they're coming to us with chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, sleep disorders, anxiety, or depression. And one of the other things that they'll have on their health history is cardiovascular, you know, disease, whether it be high blood pressure, high cholesterol, history of stroke, history of heart attack. So those are the things that we look at. And so when we're looking at that, that's a contributing factor for when we are discussing the different cannabinoids for what they're going to treat for. So like I said, people don't come to me and say, oh, I had a heart attack. Can you help me with cannabis? It's always something else, but the heart attack or the cardiovascular disease is part of the health history. So that's what we're looking at. And so some of the benefits, which is interesting with patients that we've worked with that have come for chronic pain or autoimmune conditions that do have high blood pressure or do have high cholesterol, as it turns out, over time, them learning to manage those symptoms of chronic pain, or, you know, their anxiety goes down, their depression goes down, their use of their other pharmaceuticals goes down, including those blood pressure medications. I've had, you know, people that have type 2 diabetes that have been able to decrease their diabetic medications, people that have high blood pressure medications that are now decreasing their blood pressure medications because of that whole, their endocannabinoid system is now being regulated in a way that they don't need all of that. It's come down, they're healthier, they're making better choices. Cannabis has truly helped people because it's expensive. So people will come to us and they'll start taking the plant and they'll be like, geez, Sarah, this is expensive. I said, well, I can give you some tips and tricks to keep the price down. So keeping the price down is basically health and wellness activities. Once you start to pair cannabis with healthy food choices, taking supplements, exercising, breath work is free, meditation is free, you know, walking. So all of these different things that we talk about as nurses contribute to how we can make this plant work best for us. I hope that answered the question.
No, it does. It just, you know, when we talk about health, it's really tricky. You know what I mean? Because it's you know, the FDA,
well, it's
all these things that we talk about every week. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, so with patients in particular, it's always, you know, meeting them where they're at, looking at multiple different things, and what do they feel most comfortable starting? You know, my mother has low blood pressure, right? And so, you know, you think about, so then you have to look at that. And so you look at a lot of different things, and you really start off low and slow. And if patients do have cardiovascular disease, we generally start them off with a full CBD product with a trace amount of THC, and then slowly, if they need it, you increase the THC over time. And because people can get used to it, you know what I mean? That's what you want to do, is you want them to get used to it. You don't want them to be overwhelmed. You don't want them to be hit with THC so hard that they do have that racing heart, you know, their heart increases and they do have the anxiety, and it's just going to scare them away. So starting low, going slow, and people that have cardiovascular disease, we do start with CBD dominant products.
So we can still do it safely.
And then adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The right way with anything, right? All right. With that being said, an interesting headline in the news today, which I want to talk to Tim about, because it brings up a couple of questions immediately to my head, and you guys know my brain's just wired weirdly. But GW Pharmaceuticals, right? So the creator of the first FDA-approved medication, right, made from cannabis, which we all know, Epidiolex, right, has been set to be purchased by Jazz Pharmaceuticals in what is a ridiculous cash deal, $7.2 billion in cash and stock deal, which isn't even the issue here. To me, I immediately think about a much larger company purchasing the rights to the Epidiolex, to the FDA approved medication, right? Because there's not very many companies that have that. So, you know, for me, I see that and I go, hey, Tim, is this something that we should be concerned with, or is this just a buy and sell move kind of a deal?
Epidiolex is a tiny part of GW Pharma. It's not like GW Pharma exists to make Epidiolex. They're a pharmaceutical company. That is a merger. I mean, is there maybe part of the interest? Sure. You know, it's a British company. That part of Europe is still not as sold on cannabinoid medicine as we are. They're still coming around too. It's only recently that they've accepted that CBD is not a controlled substance. So, while I mean, would it play a factor? Sure. Did they buy it up to, take all the CBD? No. Epidiolex is one product in a very large multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company that produces multiple pharmaceuticals. So, it's a merger, and this is corporate life. This is what happens. Companies get bought, companies get sold. It happens all the time.
That's the way it works, right? All right. Well, I saw that. I was like, is this something we should worry about? Is this something not? It just kind of popped in my radar. But I think the biggest news of the week we saw was the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker and Ron Wyden have announced the forming of a Senate coalition dedicated to legalizing cannabis at a federal level. I mean, we talk about these kind of headlines all the time. Is there anything different to this one, Tim?
I'm usually telling you these headlines aren't as big a deal as they sound like, and they're making a mountain out of a molehill type thing. Not this time. This time, that's actually really incredible to hear. And the reason for that is that it's not the minority party anymore. It's not Chuck Schumer, minority leader. It's Chuck Schumer, majority leader. That is a huge difference. We can talk all day about legislation that we know is dead on arrival. That's a very, very different story when we have legislative that could potentially pass. Now, to pass legislation, you still need 60 votes unless it's tied to a funding, unless they do away with the filibuster. So, there's still procedural things in place, but there are some Republicans. This is not just a simple right, left, conservative, liberal, blue, red issue. It is bleeding over into both sides more and more and more. And we're seeing that. Alabama now is starting to put medical, I believe I saw, is coming through their Senate now. So you have people on both sides of the aisle. You don't now have the individual impediments that we saw previously, whether it was Mitch McConnell, whether it was Pete Sessions, who was the former congressman from Texas, was holding things up, not Jeff, but his evil twin brother Pete. And so there were some very individual legislators in positions of power that were having an undue influence on this process. Now a lot of those barriers have been removed. Do I think all of a sudden tomorrow they're going to vote and legalize pot all over? Nothing, no domestic policy moves that quickly. Our system is designed to move slowly for good reason. Do I think we're going to make more progress than we've ever seen? Yes. Do I think that the alliance with Cory Booker and Chuck Schumer and a lot of people who have a lot of power within the Senate, combined with the House who has already passed the MORE Act, do I see some things hopefully moving forward? Yes. Would I love to see the Safe Banking Act get passed? Coming from a state that's establishing our adult use industry now, the challenges my clients face in getting property and figuring out how they're going to be able to, have a dispensary in a building that's held with a lease by a bank, which is a big no-no. Yep. There's a lot of issues that the federal legality still is really creating significant hurdles for the small guy trying to get into this market. And Vermont is very much, our entire mindset is the small guy. It's not the Curaleafs, it's not the Trulies, it's not the, big guys, the MedMens or whatever, these big multi-state operators. A little more power to them, they're doing wonderful things. We can discuss that all day. That's not what Vermont is looking for. Vermont wants a homegrown, locally owned, small mom and pop industry, craft industry, like we have done so well in so many other areas. That is incredibly difficult when you have the barriers and finance that we have currently, when you can't get a bank loan, when you can't lease a building with a mortgage on it, when you can't pay, have payroll and bank accounts. So seeing the Safe Banking Act to me would be one of the greatest things we could see, and probably one of the most realistic. I would love to see the MORE Act get a vote, if not for COVID, if not for some of the competing priorities. I think it would be a faster track for it. I think that the stimulus and COVID, rightly so, needs to take priority right now. Cannabis isn't going anywhere, but I would, where I was saying 4 to 5 years before this, before the Georgia vote, I'm saying 2 to 3 now, possibly 1 to 2. I mean, if the vaccines are working and we can really get in front of COVID with a coherent federal policy now, where everybody's on the same page and listening to science, we might be able to really start moving a lot of these agendas, cannabis being one, forward and really working on helping people. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about what the future brings, and we're hearing that from the Senate Majority Leader is a huge deal, and I think it really does say that this is real. This is going to happen. He's not up for election. He didn't need to say that. It wasn't, that wasn't to garner a few votes quickly, the younger crowd before the election comes up. He didn't need to bring it up, but he did, and I think that's telling.
That's what I'm going to say. It's very interesting to see Chuck Schumer right now, because he's been pretty vocal and adamant about their intent on making cannabis decriminalized, rescheduling, whatever they're going to do. There was talk about combining 2 different bills. Now, is that the MORE and Safe Banking Act, or is that different bills completely?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to. I mean, there's always the possibility of, merging bills, merging ideas. There's descheduling, there's decriminalization, there's legalization, there's a lot of different ways they could go about it. Somebody may have talked about combining the MORE and Safe Act, which would be great. I mean, they go like this. The one reason they've kept them separate is because the Safe Banking Act itself does not have any impact on the federal scheduling of cannabis. So it was seen as an easier piece of legislation to get through a Republican Senate, because it didn't require any senators to take a yay or nay on legalization. It merely was a banking bill, which would, allow for a lot of things that a lot of the more conservative side wanted to see, like more accountability, more tracking, getting rid of this cash-only industry, which is not good for anybody. So that's why I think it was originally separated out. Now that that problem isn't as unsurmountable as it was, combining them back into one piece of legislation may actually be a good strategy. I just hadn't happened to read that personally.
Yeah, I'll try to see if I find the article. I read one that he did mention combining the bills, and I was like, this is beautiful. It's just going to be just a marijuana bill. Specifically, like you said, they really go hand in hand. So it'd be a beautiful thing to see. It'll open up for research, it'll open up the safe banking for everybody. That's one of our hugest issues. And like we were talking about the show, insurance. I mean, if we can start making these things safe for insurance to take the gambles and the bets on, hopefully they can help people out like Sister Suzanne, right? And then everybody else listening. Now, one of the other unique things is we talk about what's going to happen in legalization with states across the country this coming year, right? And a couple of states that popped in the news this last week were New Mexico, right? Which was really interesting because it seems like everybody's filing the bill in New Mexico. There's several bills going on right now, which is hip hooray for that state. We want to talk about that real quick. And then Alabama, which is one of these states that, I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. It's just like one of these conservative states I never really thought we would ever see legalization in. What's going on in Alabama? They just approved a medical marijuana legalization bill.
Well, they're housed it. They're housed it. And remember, this is what I say, it's like I get too excited about things. They didn't pass. One member of a bicameral legislature passed. Their house passed a medical cannabis bill. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, that is pretty cool. I mean, it's Alabama. This is a place where, if you were black and had, a joint on you, you could probably be looked at life in jail just 20 or 30 years ago. So the fact that we are now moving forward and getting away from that and getting people to listen to a medical cannabis bill is fantastic. Now, I haven't had a chance to read the actual House proposal. I'm guessing it's probably a pretty restrictive bill in terms of what it does authorize, but that's almost beside the point because it's a starting point. And just like in Vermont's bill, you're never going to get a perfect bill anywhere. Get it passed, and then you can make improvements because now you're changing the zeitgeist. Now it's no longer illegal. It's so much easier to get things done with a legal product than an illegal one, just in terms of the psychology of legislation. So, by getting something passed, and if they can establish something like Mississippi did, that's a real, that's huge. And the only state left is going to be Idaho at this point. I don't know if you happen to notice that. They went the exact opposite direction this week, and their house just passed a constitutional amendment forbidding the legalization of marijuana ever.
I was just gonna. That was on my. We're gonna just segue into that exact article because it just happened an hour ago. We posted it.
Everybody else is going this direction. Idaho, for some reason, just has to go that direction. I mean, when Mississippi and Alabama are passing you by, that's a little bit of a concern.
Right, we're talking about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's on the map right now. They're discussing measures to go legalize, right? But what is going on in Idaho? I mean, Sherry, we have one of the green nurses in Idaho, and I was actually talking to her on a call the other night. And
I don't even want to dream about smoking pot in Idaho at this point. Like, they're really crazy about it. I don't get it. I don't understand. You would think the more libertarian bent would be more of a, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, do what you want to do kind of mentality. I think like Montana is very similar in terms of that, very conservative, but also very small government. Don't tell me what to do. If what I'm doing is not hurting anyone, why are you telling me I can't do it? Which makes a lot of sense, actually, if you think about it. Why Idaho is just so adamant, I don't know if it's long-term legislators. I don't know much about the state. I've flown over it a few times, that's about it. But, it's almost comical to me when you're just seeing this complete grassroots movement, just Virginia, states would never think would even consider cannabis legalization. And yet you just have this one holdout that is a constitutional amendment to ban cannabis legalization. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Well, it's silly. I don't know if it's depends. Again, it was a house, but who knows?
Yeah, so it's based on the measure, and this is what I want to read to everybody because this is a very interesting. This is going to be something to watch, right? The measure that they're based on is the wording that says the production, the manufacture, the transportation, sale, delivery, dispensing, distribution, possession, or use of a psychoactive drug shall not be permitted in the state of Idaho. So this is what's in their constitution, like Tim was saying.
Well, not yet. There was a resolution that was passed by their House. It would have to still be passed by the Senate by 2/3 majority of both parties, and then go to the voters on a ballot initiative. So it's not done, it's not finished, it's not embedded in their constitution yet. It's the first step in a process, which may or may not. But the fact that it got through, the fact the vote was like 22-11 or something is mind blowing.
Right, and I mean, this is obviously, this is not only targeted at cannabis, but obviously any drug, right? That, so the mushrooms and right. All these new, usages of.
But, with the whole language about the FDA approval and stuff, I mean, they were definitely specifically targeting cannabis. Everything else is just a bonus extra. They've been adamant, and they've been very clear about. I don't get it. I really don't get it. It does not make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. But hey, you know what? That's what the United States is designed to be. It's the states are the laboratories. If the state wants to, and the population wants to continue to elect politicians who enforce this ban, and they're really reflecting the will of the people, and the people really don't want it. Just like it's not their right to tell me I can't. It's not my right to tell them they have to. I don't understand it. I'm certainly not going to live there. I feel very bad for patients who have no access to medicine that could really help them. But at the end of the day, if that's what the voters of that state choose to do for some strange reason, that's what they choose to do.
Right. No, it's crazy. Now, another interesting topic I want to talk to you about I saw was the Census Bureau, right? So the Census Bureau has announced another new move to collect marijuana tax data from states. What's this mean? Is this just more just tracking? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? How do you feel about this, Tim?
I mean, you know, again, I come back to this. I know a lot of people, anytime they hear about any government entity collecting information, it's automatically, you know, oh my God, it's the end of the world. They're going to track us and put microchips on us. The Census Bureau exists to collect data. That's all they do. That's what they do. That's the entire reason of existence of being, is collecting data, demographic data, age data, this data, that data. The census is data. I mean, that's what they do. If we are to be taken seriously as an industry, we all should be subject to the same data collections of any other industry. Yeah, report your taxes. So what? Where's the harm? Where's the harm in reporting tax? You know, the total amount of tax revenue derived from the cannabis industry versus the pharmaceutical industry versus the retail industry. You know, these are all metrics that are used. And if we're going to be legitimate, taken seriously, we should be taken seriously. Give them the same data. Why not? You know, again, I think there's this inherent in distrusting government. And I think that, you know, government is a very broad concept. I think there are certain aspects of our government that are more and less trustworthy. I'm not a huge fan of the U.S. Attorney's Office, really, but I think the Census Department is pretty benign. You know, it's, you know, so I don't personally have a problem with that. I think that we need to get used to not being special anymore. You know, we need to be like everybody else. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for acceptance. We're looking for understanding. We're looking for normalization. And to be legitimate, that's part of the price you pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, we're seeing sales records again. Illinois just set new sales records for the first month of 2021. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about the tax, right? We're talking about banking, right? So taxes, banking, where's the money going? There was an issue in Illinois for a couple of weeks there of getting some of their tax money to the appropriate places, which they did. Thankfully, them. What is this Illinois market the one to be watching, Tim? I mean, it seems like they're just doing everything right. Are we missing anything, or
the brand new market in the Midwest of the country where marijuana legalization seemed like a distant memory in the Midwest, you know? I mean, that, or like, you know, right? You didn't see California, you know, us on the East Coast have always kind of fantasized about legalization, but there's enough cannabis around here where it's, you know, I think when New York goes, you're going to see another kind of surge, but there's a lot of good factors. You've got Chicago, you have major cities, you've got a big state, you've got a region of the country that has new legalization, and you have a, you know, for all the kind of speed bumps and getting started, Illinois did a pretty good job. You know, they did a pretty good job getting themselves up. They did a pretty good job with the regulation. Not perfect. Again, you're never going to get perfect. But they were able to learn kind of from some other mistakes, and they were to implement a adult use program that was effective, that was accessible, that didn't see the dramatic supply impacts that, you know, some other states had. They still have supply issues, of course, every adult use jurisdiction does. But I think they executed relatively well. And that is the benefit of good execution, is you get in 1 year what Massachusetts has taken 3 years to develop, which is $1 billion industry. It's going to happen, you know, inevitably it's going to happen anywhere, you know, everywhere, you know, as markets mature, as they get, you know, used to not having to go through 85 bureaucratic layers for every decision that's made. I'm telling you though, if you think Chicago looks good, just wait till Jersey. Just wait till
yeah, right.
Win Florida, you know, just win Florida goes in full adult use. That's going to be, I mean, they got a medical 400,000 patients right now. When they go full adult use, they're prime. They're ready to go. It's like Arizona. It's why Arizona was able to get online so quickly.
Yep. Yeah, no, the medical industry in its prime has been waiting. It's been set up. It's kind of like what Jersey did. It's been idle for a minute. It's been waiting. It's ready to go. One of the great things, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is something I've been waiting to talk to everybody about. Hopefully we get Sherry and Sister Suzanne's you know, input on this as well. A couple new articles released in the last couple of weeks, guys, that I think hits home for all of us, right? One that discredits the theory that cannabis is a gateway drug, which we talk about a lot, right? So there's a newly published article that you can find that literally discredits the theory that cannabis is a gateway drug. We've been talking about it for years. Activists have been talking about it since the day we started activating.
Now that my grass is green folder.
Right. I mean, and it's just amazing to think that is that issue. And most cannabis smokers can tell you 100 stories of why that is not true, right? And within that, though, one of the really cool things that we see that's pretty much right related to that, and hopefully so, is, you know, what a lot of the show is based about is opioid related deaths, right? We see cannabis dispensaries linked with a drop in opioid related deaths. So we did a study. We're linked with cannabis storefronts and the decreasedness in deaths of due to opioids, right? And then Canada also released a huge article, and we know Canada is kind of like having like a California next to us, right, in population, but it pretty much back the same theory, right? So where we have patients and we have dispensaries that are being active, right? Just like probably like we talked about with Sister Suzanne, she had active dispensaries and access to cannabis. If not, she probably would never gotten off of opioids, right? So here's a direct correlation to everything we talked about today. This is a no-brainer, right? I mean, what do you guys think about all this? Just a quick opinion talk here.
Well, we're gonna dispel that myth. I'm gonna be doing a show on that next Monday, which is really funny. Even in the American Cannabis Nurses Association, there's a document, and we have that. I learned it with Radical Health. There's a whole huge document that has a list of studies that can actually disprove that cannabis is a gateway. We all know, and even in my own, my own self, I got off of 18 pharmaceuticals using the plant over the course of a year and a half. And so that to me, it is an exit to pharmaceuticals and opioids. Cannabis is an exit. Plants, I wouldn't even, it works as medicine in our bodies no matter how we're consuming it, but it truly is an exit plant to pharmaceuticals, to nicotine, to alcohol, to opioids, to things that don't belong in our body. It truly does. It opens up, if you just think about the consciousness that comes in about health and wellness, this plant opens up our eyes, our ears, our noses, our mouths, our being with things that are good and healthy for us. And that's how I've seen this plant work for me in my life. It's truly improved the quality of my life and every single thing that I do, and I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the plant. So I see it as an exit. Cannabis is an exit to pharmaceuticals, opioids, and things that aren't healthy for us. What about you, Suzanne? What are your thoughts?
Exactly the same way. I mean, I can't even imagine where I would be without it. I'd be in bed. That's where I would be right now. Tonight, it's way past my bedtime. But it has gotten me off so many things. I mean, obviously fentanyl is one of them, but that's not the only thing. That is obviously the main thing.
It was just amazing to hear. It's amazing to hear these stories, and when we go to legalization in a lot of these states, it's like Tim used to say a lot of the thing, the sky will fall, right? Everybody thought the sky was going to fall, right? Especially with related usages of other drugs, because it's an entrance drug, like Dr. Uma talks about. It's a non-entrance drug, right? We get out of it, we get away from it. And here's a great story right now, right here. These are things we see. Again, everybody on this panel here has recovered from the use of cannabis in a way, right? Which is one of the most amazing things. Sue, you've done it in a way where, like, it was part of my culture growing up. So my family, my culture, I mean, maybe not my family is definitely not accepting of it, but my culture was accepting of it. So it's easy for me, right? Tim, I'm sure, same thing. Sherry, your story is amazing too, because I mean, you went through healthcare. You went through that cycle. So you went through an industry that was basically behind the stigmatization of cannabis, right?
Yeah.
So for you, both of you guys to sit there one day, because again, your story is a lot like Sister Suzanne's, right? You were on enough medications prescribed to you that you literally had to look at yourself one day and say, this needs to stop. How do I do that, right?
Yes, but it was interesting too, because it's so funny. It was an older woman who was a nurse who was 70 years old, who came to my house with a big fat joint and told me to get with the program. She was a nurse that had just retired, and she disclosed to me she was one of my clients for energy healing. I do Reiki and reconnective healing. I'm a Reiki master, and so she was one of my clients, and she hadn't been able to get in touch with me, and she was trying to reach out to me. And finally, she came to my house, and I go, "What are you doing here?" In bed, literally sick and suffering, and didn't want to see anyone. And she said to me, "Sherry, I'm here because I'm a friend and I want to tell you something." And she disclosed her cannabis use to me. She said, "Sherry, I've been using cannabis for 53 years, since the age of 17. I've been smoking cannabis every day, just a little bit, for 53 years. And I'm not on any pharmaceuticals, and I've never been hospitalized." I had to look at that. That I really had to sit there and look at. She goes, "You're dying. You've got nothing to lose." And she was right. And so that's what, I had to work through that stigma, because I truly didn't understand cannabis as medicine. I only understood it to be something recreational. So that's what propelled me. I shared that joint with her, and my head was cracked open. I felt like consciousness poured in. I was pulled out of that story. It brought me hope. And that's what inspired me. I said, I have to figure this out because you know what? It works. And I needed to figure out how to make it work for me. And then once I figured out how to make it work for me, then I truly felt I have an obligation to share that information and to teach other people how to get to those new levels of wellness sooner. Because I was literally like, every day I woke up and I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm ready to check out. You know, because it was it was Groundhog Day, the same thing over and over and over, the pain over and over and over, and nothing relieving it, nothing. Mm-hmm. So I can totally identify with you. I wasn't on 400 micrograms of fentanyl, but I can tell you that I know what severe chronic debilitating pain feels like. So yeah, so it does, it works. And so that is my story about how, you know, it has helped me to come off of pharmaceuticals. It has helped me to get back to living. It has helped me to have healthier life choices only because I can. and also too, is because I want to keep the cost down. So, you know, I want to use this plant to the highest potential benefit for myself and teach that to others.
We talk about, like you said, costs, right? You know, one of the last things I want to talk to Tim about real quick, and I'm glad I found the article, was there is the legal cannabis industry is booming pretty much everywhere we know right now. They're talking about taxing cannabis. There's somebody who's proposing the idea that they should tax cannabis for the potency. Is this something that we should consider? Is this something that we think that's going to happen? Is this something that's just another one of those, let's throw this in the water and see if it'll sink or swim, Tim? I saw it and I wondered about it, right? Because we were talking about, well, let me back up one more part of my thought and theory about this is we've been talking a lot about how the medical field is trying to reclassify cannabis. And this is where it kind of really struck me both ways, because they're trying to do it based on on potencies, right? More than indica sativa hybrids, right? So there's a way that they're going to do it. I'm sure Sherry can explain it to us.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll have to post it on social media so everybody can look at it and understand what they're looking to do. This kind of lines up with that, though, doesn't it? Especially when it comes to being able to tax and utilizing that revenue and stuff like that. Is this something that we could really see? You know what I mean? We're going to see strains, taxes, and the way we buy things towards cannabis with potency levels.
So basically, if it's a specific potency or a specific milligram, it's going to be taxed differently.
Yeah, that's here. Let me pull up the.
That's like so weird. I'm sorry. Who thought of that?
I've heard of schemes that tie taxation to potency, and they've never been enacted. I don't think they would go very far. It doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Define potency. Are we talking about delta A, THCA? Are we talking about delta 9? Are we talking about delta 8? Are we talking about, entourage effect? Are we talking about are we talking about edibles and tinctures, smoking? I just think there's so many variables and so many factors that could impact that. The tying tax structure to, and potency is such a vague term. I don't see how that would be enforced. I think that would be challenged left and right. What happens when your potency changes? Does your tax rate on your cannabis change when it is a little older and your THC levels have decreased? At what point do we we just start going down that road. You're like, oh wait, I don't think it's going to work all too well. And unfortunately, I think that's the case. We got to get away from this whole concept of indica sativa potency. Because it's missing the forest for the trees. You're missing the complete picture. The complete picture is the plant has cannabinoid profiles. There's multiple, 160, probably more cannabinoids, and it's about how they all work together. It's about how they work together and create medicine. That's what we need to be focusing on. You know what I mean? And we'll get there. The pharmaceutical industry, they're having a real hard time with this because their standard model is most drugs that we take started in nature, started as barks, or mold, or fungi. And they take nature and then they pound it, manipulate it, and they create a standardized pill out of it, and they synthesize it, and then they create so they can get their standard dosages, and they can have their standard models, and they can have their incredibly high profits because you can't make it, they can. And there's some benefit. I'm not saying there's not benefit to standardization. I'm not saying there's not any benefit to standardized dosages. Obviously, certain conditions, you need to be very, very precise. But they're having a real hard time accepting the fact that this plant is not one you just simply synthesize and put in a pill. They tried that with Marinol. They tried it. It didn't come out well because you're synthesizing one piece of a intricate tapestry, and that works together in conjunction. And when we start to understand how these cannabinoids work together and cannabinoid profiles and the interaction with the endocannabinoid system, and now add terpenes, which we know, lavender, we know these, naturally occurring terpenes outside of cannabinoids have effects on us. When we start to fully understand the interaction between terpenes and cannabinoid profiles and our endocannabinoid systems, we got a lot of work to do, but the payoff is going to be enormous. And that's where we're going to really start to understand cannabis as a medicine.
Yeah. Like I said, with that $1 billion buyout of GW Pharmaceuticals, is that the pharmaceutical industry looking into cannabis as a solve things? I mean, they do. That's what they do. They do cannabinoid research with GW Pharmaceuticals.
That was the name of the pharmaceutical company. And to be honest, I'm not 100. I obviously read, but I don't know too much about them. I mean, maybe that could be a major part. It could be.
Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting to see it because, like, for me, it's always about like that conspiracy theory or what that market move is or what that angle is. Like, why does a large pharmaceutical company want to buy out GW Pharmaceuticals? Like, what are they doing?
Most of the time, Joe, there's no conspiracy.
Yeah, I know. Well, I want to find it.
The answer is usually the truth. Not always.
I know. But when we ask these questions, it's usually like, we talk to people, and a lot of it gets generated from like conversations that we always have with each other or with other people that call. You'd be like, yo, what's this mean? People don't, they read the headline, they read it real quick, and I'm always like, these are great questions for Tim. So it's like, what's my first impression when I read a headline like this? Is this?
I remember, I'm only half my opinion. I don't speak for fact. I'm not on the board of directors of any of these pharmaceutical companies. I'm talking about, I have been wrong more times than I care to admit in life. So that possibility certainly exists. I'm just sharing what I see from my little piece of it.
Well, opinions are always great too. I mean, it's just like, what's your first impression of this? I mean, it's like, I do this with a lot of people I talk to. It's like, what's your first impression of this article? What hits you first? And like, then you read the article and you're like, oh man, okay. Now it's either reinforced it or, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Because a lot of, what we see in news, unfortunately, is clickbait, right? There's a couple great articles even about that in the cannabis industry, how people just are teasing for clickbait, that there's nothing there, nothing behind. Or invalid information, whether it's a pro or a con, you know what I mean? Especially with the people, the prohibitionists. And we don't see that circle of information because we're well embedded into our cannabis communities. But if you're ever to get in and see what floats around in those circles, wow, you know what I mean? Like, I'm actually a part of a page that is against cannabis medications, and it's amazing the stories we see there, and then the propaganda that's there, you know what I mean? So when you're somebody like Sister Suzanne and you believe wholeheartedly in the medical industry, right? And you're doing everything they say, and you're lucky to be alive, in my opinion, and you're lucky to function. 400 micrograms to me is just, I don't know how you function at all. Literally, I don't know how you weren't a vegetable or in coma by taking that much kind of medications. And if everybody just go to Google and just Google what will happen to you if you consume that much. Like Sherry was saying, a lot of people use that in to knock people out in medicine, right? It's
surgery. Use it in the intensive care unit. Post-op, like people would be on drips to keep them knocked out for pain. Cardiac, like intensive care unit drugs, surgical drugs. That's what they use in surgery.
Like I said, the first thing comes to my mind is the heroin. That opioid epidemic that's going on in this country right now, where we're seeing it being the issue of many lives being lost, right? And then I see huge fentanyl raids and recoveries and arrests, and enough to wipe out like a state. And you're just like, what are we doing with this stuff? Like, what is the usage of it, right? And you hear that Sister Suzanne's been prescribed this for 20 years at a level that all of us can have a party with, is ridiculous. And again, Sister Suzanne, we're coming to an end here. Your story has really touched my heart. Once I heard about it, and then I saw your video. Thank you to Sherry for sharing her story with me. And again, thank you for your time today, because I know it's not easy to come share a story like this. And I am eternally grateful that for people like the Green Nurses, your doctor who is open-minded enough to allow you to have that conversation with them and be honest with you too, and tell you that, I don't know this, because even in our comments and from things we hear throughout our industry and our circles is that that's not always the case. A lot of doctors are pretty anti and are against and will consider you try alternate methods and are willing to invest in alternate for prescriptions and pharmaceuticals, but they're not open to the cannabis regime. So again, thank you for being a great walking, talking, little granny of a bill. I just want to hug you.
Just so happy that I can share this with other people. I really am. People need to understand that I was not somebody who would ever be really open to this, but it's amazing what constant pain will do to you. You'll say, I'll try about anything. And this really has been the easiest thing with the help of the green nurses. I can't even thank you enough for the help that they've given me.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I'm going to tell you, me helping you, you helped my mother. So and I'm back in the will.
Happy to hear that.
Well, it's good to know. It's good to know there's a place to reach out to. And again, thank you, Sherry, for being a great platform for that to happen. And again, guys, Sherry is in the nurse networks all over the country. There's a great community of nurses coming together, and it's daily right now. I mean, it's been amazing to see the amount of change in the medical industry for interest in becoming a cannabis nurse and then becoming a little bit more educated about the cannabinoid systems, cannabinoid usages, how it interacts with bodies, and how people can actually look to this to get off of opioids and prescriptions and look away from what we consider standardized medicine right now and get more back to that old Asian Western type of herbalistic approach to medicine, right? Which is balance and things that we talk about every day. Again, we're going to end up calling the show. I want to say thank you to Timothy Fair from Vermont Cannabis Solutions for coming on and sharing his opinions and giving us a little bit of straightening out on what's the hotties going on in the week. It's like we got to do this like Saturday Night Live skit where we get together and we sit down and do like the news segment, right? And then just make a farce of it, because a lot of it is like that, which is why we're here. Sherry Tuckett from the Green Nurse, thank you again. And thank you again. You guys want to check out all the work that we're doing. We're doing a lot of educational and purposeful content right now within videos and Terpentine Tuesdays, the Can Talk segments where they're health based, so you guys get a little bit of understanding and an idea of what the medical community how they're looking at. Because like Sherry said, she's doing the digging, finding the research. She has the outlets and the places that she was more than willing to share with people and get the proper information to the proper people, right? So we can rely on it. And without people like Sherry, we don't have people like Sister Suzanne, which again, another amazing story of getting off 20 years of opioid prescriptions. It's not even abuse or addictions. I mean, I would have to say you had an addiction at some point, but it wasn't to the point of addiction as we know it, right? I mean, it's prescribed and it's for pain, and you were just getting zonked and knocked out. So it's a whole different story for someone like you, right? And to understand that people are willing to go to that length, just because of the stigma of cannabis, of a 20-year prescribed opioid issue, before you actually got acknowledged and pushed to see what the plan can do for you is just, I feel sorry. And again, my heart breaks for somebody like you in your position, especially for 20 years of this. Suzanne, how can, again, I know I asked you this earlier, how can people reach out to you?
Do it through Sherry. That's the easiest way. She can get people in touch. I'd be happy to talk to anybody. I've
already got two people. Two people already private messaged me. So the phone's going to be ringing tomorrow.
We got to help you get a Facebook page or a little social media page where people can reach out, and at least a place where you can share and interact with your stories. Again,
good idea.
People, if you want to reach out to Sherry. Yeah, it's just amazing. Guys, next week we have Meredith Mann of
my favorite people. I love Meredith.
All right, this is gonna be interesting. We're trying to figure this out now. She just opened up a brand new outlet here in Vermont. She's one of our favorite edible producers here in Vermont. Really takes a lot of care. Really high quality products. And they just opened, like I said, a new building that's supposed to be interactive, hosting events and all these things. So hopefully we'll get a live demo going this week. But we'll stay tuned. Find us on social media. You can find us everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all of our archives will be posted to YouTube as well. So if you guys want, if you missed the show, if you want to see the whole show, it's really easy to find us. If you ever want to see any of our past shows, say that you missed, now they're easy to find on our YouTube page, and also the Green Nurse segments as well. You can find all there. So Sister Suzanne, again, thank you for your time. It's amazing to see the change, what cannabis has done. This is why we do what we do. To be honest with you, is just so people like you can see, experience, and find that there's an alternative idea to what's going on, and that you're being fed. You know what I mean? It's just, like, no different. This is this is the medical industry pushing you in this direction. This wasn't your choice. This wasn't you on the corner buying fentanyl, right? I mean, this was something that's prescribed, and you went through the industry for 20 years like this. So again, your story needs to be shared, and I truly honored and thank you for your time this week.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to share.
Thank you
Take
to
care,
Timothy.
everybody.
Thank you to Sherry. Next week, guys, Magic Man, stay tuned. Watch out for the teaser videos.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.